When Jennifer asked us to think about think about presenting to you guys in the theme of wilderness, we got excited. So I'm gonna spend the next 20 minutes not really showing the breadth of our work, but insight into how we think about and frame how we approach our work. And wilderness has a lot to do with it, especially with some of our first projects. They're residences out in the landscape. And so we're trying to find ways to, as the theme is proposing, a commune with nature. When I think about that word, I think about Aldo Leopold's land ethic, which he's proposing a philosophy in us valuing land not as a commodity or a resource, something we can profit from, but as a member of our community. So the soils, the plants, the animals, all of that biotic community ecology is part of things we should care about and value. And this Kate and I hold dearly in how we approach our work out in the landscapes, but even if we have an urban project, how to bring those moments of nature in. And so that to me helped sort of frame this talk, but also for you guys, a little insight into how we move into that work. Kate and I started this practice in 2007 or 8, recession era. And we're fortunate to land a commission. He and I have been collaborating together. We both went to undergrad and graduate school. That's where this photo is taken, in Lubbock, Texas. For a good part of that practice, it's been Kate and I, but recently we've grown and expanded to about 7 individuals in our practice, all of which I think share a curiosity and reverence for our place, the natural environment, culture, and history. A little bit about this image. This is a phenomenon that happens every year around April. And the winter winds are shifting and we're getting the spring winds coming in from the southeast that's kicking up all the agricultural land and dust and puts that in the air. So a little insight into the name and the origin. More insight into the name and the origin. For Kate and I, this map encompasses what we call our backyard. Our families have a connection to this region for generations. And its history, its culture, its natural environment, and its built environment are something that really drives our inspiration. The white dots resemble places that we've lived, our families come from, and you can kind of see a pattern there. We're all on the 32nd latitude, or I-10. 20 when it gets to Dallas. And the red dots were some of our early projects, and now we need to update this map because our team's expanding of where we're coming from, and our projects are expanding. So we're thinking about how we approached living in the desert and being from this place and instilling that passion and soul and putting that into the work responsive to this environment. And we're now having to think about other environments and how we can use those tools to engage that. Cade hails from Carlsbad, New Mexico. As he claims, it's located on the mighty Pecos River. His grandfather was a cotton farmer, and he grew up in a house that was 2-foot-thick adobe walls. And so his parents actually just recently bought this land back and have been restoring their old family house. He is a quintessential New Mexican. Green chili, red chili, all of it. But this is a place that he calls home and drives his inspiration. I think he's a fan of the Sonoran Desert because we live and work here, but this place holds a special reverence. I was born in southern Arizona on an Army base at the US-Mexico border. My father he was born in El Paso, and his family migrated from Chihuahua, Mexico. My mother immigrated from her home in Seoul, Korea. And in 1970, she brought her mom, she was enlisted in the US military. She brought her mom, who spoke no English, to live out in a trailer outside of Sierra Vista in this landscape. There's a common thread that runs between Cade and I's migrations through that region. Things that we try to, we look for patterns, and we get a great vastness, a large sky, a lot of dirt, a lot of dust. But those things, I think, humble us. They make us feel tiny when we look out at the horizon or we're exploring these wildernesses, that great vastness of this region. So as architects, primarily, we're also builders, artists, craftsmen, and self-proclaimed stewards of this landscape. And as we move through these natural spaces, we look for direction, inspiration, insight into a place. We look for areas of prospect, of refuge, of fertility, of resource, of commune, of solitude. We go to the natural environment first because that space exists. There is a feeling, there's an atmosphere, there is an energy that we can feed off, be inspired of, or just even tap into. But we don't just look at nature as well, we look at the cultures who have lived here for 10 to 12,000 years. Unfortunately, we live in a region that I think science is now showing 20,000 years. We live in a region where humans have been adapting and thriving in this environment. It makes me think about the caves cut into the mountains here in Bandelier, New Mexico, offering a very primitive respite from the harsh sun. The materials holding the coolness of the earth as you get into these spaces and feeling that radiation. You then see the accumulation of time through these steps and handholds, thousands of years old. And you can start to imagine how these spaces provide that first level of comfort in our environment. The architect and critic, Juhani Pallasmaa, speaks about ruins having the ability to awaken our imagination. For Kate and I, these are things that inspire our dreams, in the way we think about and traveling to these sites, how they respond to their environment. And there's a very particular character of, I hold it as pre-industrial age. How are they living and thriving in this environment without air conditioning? So among our travels from Machu Picchu to Tikal to Palenque, Chiapas, West Texas, Jacals, to the cultural artifacts of the Four Corners region, all of these have awakened our imagination. They've unconsciously, when we're doing this, sort of fed our inspiration and fed how we perceive the work. For me, it's provided an authentic American aesthetic. They're the original pioneers of this landscape. We don't have Victorian homes, we don't have craftsman bungalows. They are masonry structures that are thought about in response to the sun, the wind, the celestial patterns, and of their material culture and environment. And I think the only way to really learn from these natural spaces and from these cultural artifacts is to put your body there. You have to feel and experience that, and that changes over time. In this image here, I have a fond memory of my daughters and I dropping into this canyon in Utah in late November, and the temperature was 30 when we started, maybe 45 by the time we got here in late morning. And we're at the bottom of the canyon where the cold air is sinking, and we see this granary up on the ledge in the light. And as we hike up to that ledge, 20, 30 feet above that desert floor, the thermal energy shifted, and our beanies and our gloves and our flannels all started to come off because we were sweating. And at that moment, in just going to explore this granary, you have this physical experience. And for us as architects, it gives us insight into thinking about how these cultures sited their architecture. It's a material culture that is purely responsive to its climate, its place, and the materials that inform that. I think for he and I, we're continually in awe when we come across these things about how such temporal materials can last thousands of years. We have insight there, or more so, coming across these artifacts and residue, the markings of their hand or their work or their lifestyle still serve as stoic reminders of their life in these arroyos and canyons. So when we think about the natural environment, we think about the cultures that have lived here for millennia and thrived here, we try to then think about those qualities and how we engage our work. As I'd mentioned, I think it's important that your body is an important part of that process in experiencing our work. You're engaging your senses. For us, when we're trying to find where to site a home or even think about where you'll have your morning coffee, it is a negotiation between your thoughts, your perceptions, your fears, your emotions, and your senses. In essence, it's intuition. It's innate. And so all of us, I like the mission and manifesto, we're all creative. So we don't need science, we don't need people telling us that we have this, just by mere observation, curiosity, travel, we can tap into that. So in our work, we look to our region for clues. The image on the top here is SP Crater near Flagstaff in the lava fields. And the image on the bottom is our project Casa Caldera. It's made of pulverized lava rock mixed with cement to make 18-inch walls. This project is outside of Patagonia. There's no air conditioning. And so we're really testing to put our thoughts and our knowledge to work. How can we cite this to take advantage of winter sun to heat up the cool mornings? And how can we act as a defense mechanism against the battering summer heat? And so there's a lot of efficiencies here, and it's a small, under 1,000 square foot structure altogether. We think about arranging and orienting the buildings, passive solar. And so deep overhangs to the south to keep out the harsh summer sun, but you're able to use the outdoor space comfortably. That overhang also measured to allow enough winter sun in to charge the mass and to get some of that free energy in winter. The image on the left is Mesa Verde overhang, and the image on the right is the Tucson Mountain Retreat project in the West Mountains. For us, it still comes back to the body, the experience of being in this slot canyon to the left in 100-degree heat in the desert. You immediately find, 80 degrees as the wind's blowing over your sweat and cooling you down. And so nature's providing these clues and these mechanisms for us to understand our thermal comfort. So we try to incorporate some of these things of that quality of being in the earth and the radiating coolness of that, along with some of the poetic qualities of the texture and striations of being in that rock. The image on the left is Devil's Canyon in the Guadalupe Mountains in Texas. And the image on the right is the entrance to the bedrooms at the Tucson Mountain Retreat. The image on the right that's a little squished is the entry to that project I've been referring to, Tucson Mountain Retreat. And those steps were imagined or inspired by the degradation of the outcroppings in the mountains. One on the property, but two just in our experiences hiking canyons. You can either engage in your playfulness, run up, skip, jump over the rocks like you're crossing a creek, or you can slow down and tune in. Both of those were the intention of that step, to bring you to that present moment in yourself, in your body, and your awareness. There was a budget for landscaping that got cut, but I'm kind of glad it got cut. For a long time, those steps laid bare, and over the seasons, nature has done the natural thing. Those steps are collecting seeds that are moving with the water flow, and we have the creosote and the burr sage, and right now a few palo verdes that are growing. So I think it's better, actually, than us deciding some ocotillos here and some agave there. And it kind of goes with the rhythm of thinking those nooks and crannies and where water collects in the desert. The image on the right is a charred Spanish cedar wall in that same project. A few inspirations came from this. There was the practical preservation of the wood to burn it. So you make it rot resistant and pest resistant. We chose Spanish cedar for two reasons. Its aromatic nature, so you get that sensory, but also its aesthetic quality. And after burning a few samples, this held the most uniform crack at a certain temperature. And that crack reminded us of the aridness in the desert floor. It also drew upon inspiration as you go into sort of the natural ruins of what our deserts are facing in the future. You still walk into this room 10 years later, and you still get that aroma of the cedar. It's not a burn smell, but it sort of activated this sweet cedar smell. Dappled light. We think deeply about the quality of light, and we're inspired simply by just sitting under the shade of a mesquite tree. And so thinking about those qualities of light and how to sort of mediate or engage that atmosphere in our work. So the stairs are plasma cut, friends of ours out of Baltimore. We sent them a care package of dust, dirt, and cactus bones. and told them dappled light under a mesquite tree And I think our friend Pavlina opened it and a bunch of critters came crawling out. But I think it was enough to land her, and she came up with this beautiful concept of this lacy stair that it's hard to see in the pictures, but it gets more open and porous at the top, and at the bottom the treads are more closed. The cedar walls, you have good detail. The cedar walls, all those are remnants of that other wall I showed you where we have to cut the wood and make them a precise width. We used all of those drops, reburned them, and lined them on the inside of this wall. We had a project a few years ago for the Tucson Audubon Society to re-envision one of their wildlife viewing pavilions. The site is the Patent Center for Hummingbirds down in Patagonia. There's one specific hummingbird that they're about and we became about. They're excited about the violet-crowned hummingbird that travels its northernmost migration from Mexico to this property. In that, Cade researched the hummingbird and found that its wings have the ability to work independently. So at one moment, a wing can be like this and another like this. From that thought, he thought about the form of this structure and the roof twist. As we continue to play with it and make it more than just form, or how do we bring some meaning or value to that pragmatics, we looked at the ability to drain water and divert it to 2 catch basins on site. And those catch basins at the ends of those twists, we don't need a gutter at that point, we can just channel water. Those basins are meant to provide natural foods for the hummingbirds in the season. So you get the pollinators for butterflies and those hummingbirds. I encourage, if you haven't been here, to please go. These images show you soon after it was built. Now the material has aged on purpose and has sort of blended more into its environment. A lot of these ruins for us, how to distill that, I think there's something elemental that brings each of us back to our humanness, at least for me. Things like scale, permanence, ideas like scale, permanence, craftsmanship, culture, history, our memories. As we continue to gain these experiences, we look to distill them to their essences and integrate them into our time and place. We're not trying to recreate them. We're not trying to, in a way, preserve them. And there isn't this idea of tradition. We are into the idea of progress and moving forward, and what can our spaces and our work sort of exemplify in our time and our place. So in that, we think about qualities of light, as I mentioned, that change over seasons. Think about where you're going to have your coffee in the winter. Think about where you'll find the shade in the summer. Some other values that we take from these cultural artifacts are composition, natural materials, natural light, ventilation, and intimateness, markings of the craftsman, the hand, and some of the and material. I think I said that one. And we are deeply fascinated with our work and how it ages over time. Erosion, patina, what does that mean in an era of sustainability or permanence? What does permanence have? So we think about these temporal timelines. I'm very much inspired from the geology of the place, the history written into the textures of the landscape. So as creatives, as architects, as builders, we're searching for a presence in our work, in all of it, in the intimate spaces or the larger work and how it fits into its landscape. And through that presence, we're trying to bring an awareness to you, your body, your state of being, and a connection to that immediate world, that environment, but also that larger context and region and place. And this was just a snippet. There's probably not enough. You're like, what? That's all you're going to show? Where's the buildings? I encourage everyone to visit our website. dustdb.com. It was recently done by OpenForm, beautifully done. On there you'll find an extensive amount of photos, hunt for the videos, and feel free to email us with any questions you may have, and Kate especially, since he wasn't here.